A witness is mid-sworn testimony before Parliament. The evidence leader is still speaking, and he packs up and walks out. No formal permission, no official dismissal. Now legal experts warn that single decision could bring serious consequences, including a possible criminal case, a court order forcing his return, and a formal complaint already filed by one of South Africa's major political parties. This is the story of Paul O'Sullivan, the oath he took, and why that oath may now trap him. Welcome back. Today we break down one of the most dramatic, legally complex moments in South Africa's parliament in recent weeks. O'Sullivan's abrupt exit from the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee on Thursday, February 27th, and the escalating fallout. The committee was created to probe alleged corruption and undue interference in the criminal justice system, with testimony from high-profile figures and major implications for the credibility of powerful institutions. On Thursday, two key witnesses returned to conclude evidence: O'Sullivan and former acting National Police Commissioner Komatso Leigh-Ann. Both sessions were explosive, but O'Sullivan's departure sent the real shockwaves through the political and legal community.
So to take a step back, we have charges that a company owned by Mr. Matlala is allowed to pass itself off as, or people employed by that company are allowed to pass themselves off as police officers because someone inside the EMPD has unlawfully given them access to blue light vehicles through the offices of EMPD. Those are the charges. Those charges are sufficiently substantiated that independent attorneys engaged by the city have said, there is a case here, let us proceed with disciplinary action against the man who created this situation, Brigadier Mkhwanazi. You agree?
Yes.
That took place in the first half of 2023, that charges were formulated and that the attorneys were ready to proceed. And we sit now 2.5 years later, and nothing appears to have been done about this case. Mr. Mkhwanazi still hasn't been called to his disciplinary commission, as far as I can work out. You're nodding.
I'm waiting for you to finish off response.
Okay. How do you explain that? You were in charge of HR over this period. How do you explain that?
O'Sullivan's session started tense and escalated. He addressed what he called mudslinging about why he sought South African citizenship. Born in Ireland, he confirmed he holds triple citizenship: South Africa, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. That became a major focus, with some committee members questioning his loyalties and even alleging he may have acted as a foreign spy. He rejected that outright, saying he took an oath of allegiance when he became a South African citizen in 1995 and has spent 36 years fighting crime in South Africa, not for pay, but to make the country better. He also criticized KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Leigh-Ann Mkhwanazi's July 2025 media briefing, calling it a red herring to distract from criminal activity within crime intelligence and describing it as dishonest and divisive. O'Sullivan opened on a more conciliatory note by withdrawing past insults and apologizing for previously telling committee members to kiss my ass, including when he refused to appear in person weeks earlier. But the tone kept worsening. MK Party MP David Skosana called him a thug, conman and thief. The questioning turned visibly hostile, and O'Sullivan grew increasingly frustrated. His testimony was meant to end by 1 p.m. When the session ran over, he began packing. While evidence leader Soviet Leigh-Ann was still wrapping up, O'Sullivan stood up and left, saying he needed to catch a flight.
Good morning to you, Ayanda, and to the viewers at home. As we stand here outside the Cape Town Central Police Station, we're expecting the leadership of the EFF to be arriving any time from now. Of course, to answer your question, the charge that they will be laying is a contempt of parliament charge relating to the contempt of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities Act, in that a witness such as Paul O'Sullivan was still under oath and they had not been dismissed or given leave of absence by the chairperson. He took it upon himself to walk out while the proceedings were on, and that didn't sit well with members of Parliament. Again, his argument or complaint, or rather reasoning for leaving the committee abruptly, was that he was trying to rush to the airport to catch a flight. And now the EFF leader, Julius Malema, after he had left, had actually argued that Paul O'Sullivan is on record in the proceedings of the committee saying that he owns a private aircraft. So he felt that he could have made arrangements with his pilot. In fact, he himself is a person who has got a license of a pilot. So he could have made alternative arrangement to have a flight later on, because the committee had not yet concluded the proceedings, particularly the evidence leaders, because they were on the final stretch of rounding up or tying loose ends in relation to the testimony of Paul O'Sullivan. So members of the committee were left with egg in the face when they could not actually put questions to O'Sullivan. So his testimony, as we stand, is incomplete, and we don't know whether he will have a chance to come back to the committee in the near future. Ayanda.
Because of just how taken aback MPs were, I mean, there was a debate that followed thereafter about how to repeat or prevent a repeat of what actually took place yesterday. And I wonder, Bulelani, whether there was any kind of, let's call it, conclusion insofar as how the committee will conduct its work.
The reaction inside the chamber was immediate. Evidence leader Leigh-Ann ended the session by saying the committee would seek formal legal counsel to determine the consequences of O'Sullivan's unauthorized departure, a clear signal this would not be treated as a minor procedural issue. Soon after, Parliamentary spokesperson Moloto Mothapo issued a public warning. Whether a witness appears by invitation or is formally summoned, the expectations and consequences are the same. Anyone appearing before Parliament must respect its constitutional function, answer questions, and stay until officially excused. Failing to do so, he warned, could amount to a criminal offense. Speaker Thoko Diditsa then demanded a full report on what happened during the sitting. Legally, the key question became, does it matter that O'Sullivan was not under a formal subpoena? Advocate Tembeka Nkukaitobi, speaking on 702 with Bongani Bingwa, said the answer is less than you might think. He argued that once O'Sullivan entered the room and took an oath to testify truthfully and remain for the duration, he placed himself under Parliament's authority, a constitutional institution exercising legal powers. In that view, contemptuous conduct in the chamber, even by a voluntary witness, can still be contempt of Parliament. Nkukaitobi acknowledged the lack of a subpoena complicates things and called it partly a semantics debate, but said it does not remove the risk. He added committee members may later regret not issuing a subpoena because it would have strengthened their legal footing. The consequences he outlined remain twofold: a criminal contempt case or a court order compelling O'Sullivan to return and finish his testimony.
Chair, I'm not sure if we are ready to begin at this stage. I understand that there was a request for a possible postponement. I don't know where we stand.
Ms. Magula.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, today we meant to proceed as arranged yesterday, but there's a bit of a predicament that we are facing. So I am requesting that, it's my humble request that the matter be rolled over until the 2nd of March, because there are documents which were received during midnight, and when we perused those documents, we found that we have to give a thorough attention to them before Ms. Kasheka can proceed, and they are voluminous. Hence, we request that the matter stand down. And also, there are documents that were received this morning, a document that was received this morning, and it is very crucial that we go through it thoroughly and consult through it before we can proceed. So that is my request.
The situation escalated further when the economic freedom fighters took direct action. The EFF filed a formal criminal complaint against O'Sullivan, specifically in connection with his walkout from the committee session. EFF MP Leigh-Ann made clear that the party views this incident not in isolation, but as part of a larger pattern of what she described as Parliament's failure to enforce its own authority. Mathis pointed to Speaker Didiza directly, arguing that she had failed to act against O'Sullivan on multiple previous occasions, including an earlier incident where he allegedly threatened a witness during proceedings, an incident that had resulted in a written committee report and a formal legal opinion being submitted to the Speaker. Mathis indicated that no action had been taken in response. Beyond O'Sullivan himself, the EFF used this moment to make a broader political argument that Parliament has been compromised and is protecting individuals it should be holding accountable. The party also raised questions about how O'Sullivan obtained his South African citizenship, suggesting there are unresolved issues in his Home Affairs documentation that warrant further scrutiny. The EFF's filing means this incident has now moved beyond parliamentary procedure into the formal criminal justice system.
Leigh-Ann, thank you very much for speaking to us. Just an outline of the events that brought you to Cape Town Police Station this morning.
As the whole country, and in fact the entire world, saw yesterday, Paul O'Sullivan appeared before the ad hoc committee for proceedings, and he walked out before the committee was concluded. So according to the Powers and Privileges Act, Section 17, he is in contempt of Parliament, and it does carry a criminal offence which is equivalent to a fine or imprisonment or both. So the Speaker did not act as she should have. I don't know if she was eating scones also while this whole thing was going on. We allowed her up until 11:30 when proceedings ended, to act on this, and she wrote back to our Chief Whip last night saying that she's waiting for a legal opinion, and she will act if, what did she say, National Chair? If any. So we knew that she's not going to act, and this is what brings us here this morning. And it's not the first time, because if you go and ask her why she hasn't acted on that same man who threatened a witness during proceedings, the committee has written a report, a legal opinion has been given to her, and she didn't act on. She didn't act on summoning Paul O'Sullivan, and she only acted after we had to put her on blast in the media and during social media, and then next minute O'Sullivan showed up here. So we are dealing with what looks like a captured parliament that has no interest of the people. Instead, they are protecting someone who even we don't know how he got his citizenship. And if you go through those documents we received from Home Affairs that none of you have asked for, you will see that this man is a fraudster. He has captured our justices. He was training our police.
While O'Sullivan dominated the headlines, it is worth noting that the same session produced a second major confrontation, this time in the afternoon with former acting National Police Commissioner Komatso Fa-Lane. Evidence leader advocate Norman Arendse introduced Fa-Lane's charge sheets and a recent Labor Appeal Court judgment. On February 5th of this year, the Labor Appeal Court dismissed Fa-Lane's appeal for reinstatement, upholding his dismissal from the South African Police Service in July 2020 following findings of dishonest conduct. Fa-Lane refused to answer questions about the judgment and challenged Arendse directly, accusing him of bias and of representing a cabal connected to former IPID boss Robert McBride. The confrontation became so heated that Arendse expressed open disappointment, stating that his evidence, including the court judgment and forensic reports, was grounded in objective facts and contained no personal bias. One of the specific issues raised involved the Athemba Forensic Group tender, a contract for forensic cameras worth approximately R92 million, which allegedly resulted in a R24 million settlement paid by the South African Police Service. After consulting with his legal team during a break, Fa-Lane ultimately withdrew his accusation against Arendse to allow proceedings to continue.
You see, on the strength of a bid that should have been disqualified on any one of a number of obvious grounds, the city has paid 3.5 million. And it's paid it to a person who just happens to be the partner of Kat Matlala, who is driving around with blue lights that were obtained through the city. Does that not strike you as somewhat worrying on both fronts?
Chair, when I was speaking to my legal team yesterday, and we're going through the payments, this is one of the companies. At some point I said, they mustn't be utilized. Initially, when I took over, after I think Makosi left and I started being involved here before we could fill the position on training issues, I picked up that there was no rotation. Therefore, we couldn't guarantee equitable share of service providers. I called my team in that division and I said, this must be done correctly. I further called the head of EPMO to come and assist in terms of coming with a system to ensure that bidders are given equal opportunity. And there were about 2 or 3 bidders I was not necessarily happy with their work. And if I recall, this was one of them. I said, when I saw that there was a payment that happened in November last year, I was a bit concerned because in my take, I said, let's stop utilizing this bidder. But because I would have been involved probably to sign the order, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't find those documents here. I can't explain why did we continue with this bidder, but there were 3 of them I was not happy with their work. And the certain demands that I understood that they might have wanted to do work specifically for EMPD. And I put a red flag on that. And I will still take full accountability that continued to be utilized, despite the fact that I said I'm not happy with them. There were 2 or 3 of them I said I'm not happy. And I really want to emphasize, never seen this late in my life. But I did pick up that the work that they were doing, I was not 100% happy with, and some of the demands that were starting to be made. Thank you, Chair.
In response to the fallout, O'Sullivan has defended his decision. He says there was a clear time agreement before the session, and when proceedings ran past it, leaving was reasonable. He also claims the room's atmosphere collapsed into unfair attacks and personal accusations instead of structured questioning. Whether that defense is enough to protect him from contempt proceedings or a criminal complaint is now for legal experts and the committee to decide. What started as one witness ending his own session has escalated into a legal and political confrontation about Parliament's authority, the duties of voluntary witnesses, and whether South Africa's oversight institutions can enforce their mandates. At the center is one act, O'Sullivan taking an oath, then acting as if the hearing was over before Parliament said it was. That oath may end up being the most consequential moment of the day, and the fallout is still unfolding. We'll keep following it. If this breakdown helped, subscribe for more in-depth coverage of South African politics and governance.